Hello and welcome to Insight Weekly. This is episode 8 of our Intelligence Fusion Weekly podcast. This week with me, we've got Vincent Fevrier, who leads for the Americas.
Hi, Laura.
Hello. We have Chris, our regional analyst, who is covering Asia this week.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Chris. And we've got Daniel Harrington, our chief operating officer, who is also covering Europe for
Hi,
us.
Laura.
Hi, Daniel. Vincent, would you like to kick us off this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So in South America and Colombia, so earlier this week, the ELN, one of the far-left guerrilla movements within the country, announced that they'd be conducting an armed strike between February 14th and the 17th, between 6 a.m. and 6 a.m., during which time they'd be conducting attacks. During that same period of time, they said that there'd be a transportation shutdown, and they warned civilians within the areas that they control not to travel via road, air, and any maritime waterways, or they could potentially be targeted, as well as not to travel within convoys of the army or the police, or they might be caught in the crossfire during any types of ambushes or attacks. Security forces have been put on the highest level of alert, and cities like Medellin and Bogota have increased their security posture as well in order to prevent any such attacks within those cities. The Colombian Federation of Transporters have asked during this time that the government ensure their security, but based on the areas where the groups have control, which are quite remote, I think that probably that'll be a difficult thing to undertake, and there's already been quite a few vehicles that have been set on fire in previous attacks by the groups. And since military and police get targeted themselves, it'll be difficult in that sense.
So on the platform for kind of businesses operating in the area in Colombia, you can actually track the activity of particular groups, including the likes of the ELN. So at the moment I have filtered for the involved party, the country of Colombia, and anything reported after the 1st of January. So this is showing all of the activity for this year to date, allowing you to get a more complete picture of this kind of group and what they're up to. What are the wider impacts of this, Vincent?
So the group's been quite active since the beginning of this year, and probably more so compared to the same period of time than 2019. Although last year we had quite a significant large attack in January, which targeted a police academy and caused a high number of casualty. But it seems like from the start of this year, there's been quite a lot of activity. Not only from the ELN, but from the EPL and FARC dissidents as well, which are two other armed groups within the country. In terms of impact, I would say there's multiple sectors that could potentially be targeted, and previous armed strikes conducted by the groups, not only the ELN but others, have targeted oil and gas. So there has been an attack on Tuesday of this week where the Caño Limón pipeline was targeted by an explosive device, causing an oil spill. NGOs that might work in the area could potentially also be targeted. So I would say that during this armed strike, there's been talk that maybe it's not as serious, maybe it is. So I think just precautionary measures should be implemented, and maybe traveling within certain areas, particularly rural areas where the groups are known to operate, should be put off. Electricity, public utilities might also be targeted. So late last week on Friday, I believe, the transmission tower was destroyed using explosives, and that attack was conducted by the ELN just in a forested area just off Medellin, and other explosives were found next to another transmission tower not far from that site. So it's got far-reaching impacts for a variety of sectors, and of particular importance is that this armed strike is not the only one at the moment. There's been an announcement by the FARC dissidents in the Department of Coca that they'd be conducting an armed strike around the same time period, potentially conducting attacks. So the impact within that department could be even higher because FARC dissidents and ELN guerrillas operate there. And the EPL, which is another armed group, is also conducting their own armed strike with a start date of February 12th. So it's already started with indefinitely. So it could already continue. And they had already conducted one last week as well.
Yeah, thank you. And over to you, Chris.
So taking a look at Western Myanmar, two very similar artillery strikes, both affecting civilian populations. So the first occurred on the 11th of February in the village of Myuktung in Kyuktor Township, and it was 4 children who were playing football were injured after an artillery strike. And then 2 days later, in one of the nearby townships of Buthadong, more specifically in Kamwichong village, 12 students at a school were injured after an artillery strike hit the school.
Thank you. So on the platform at the moment, I'm just demonstrating both of these strikes and your ability to take a closer look at the full picture and see all the information that we record as part of the incident. So that includes the likes of the affected sectors and the casualty count as well. But Chris, can you give your perspective, a little bit more insight into what these strikes mean?
Sure. So with these strikes, the Myanmar military have been blamed of launching the attacks. However, they're occurring in townships where both the Myanmar military and Arakan Army, which is one of the main rebel groups in the area, have been fighting, and there have been significant skirmishes this week in those areas. Both groups do have a history of human rights violations and of targeting civil populations, so we don't actually know for sure who did launch the attacks. In regards to long-term impacts, one of the major things is it will continue to fuel the refugee crisis in the area, which we see with the Rohingya at the border with Bangladesh. However, most of these attacks occur in remote locations and outside of the major commercial hubs. So most businesses are in fact finding that they're not so badly affected by these attacks.
Okay.
Are NGOs affected at all in that area? Do they operate?
There tend not to be a huge amount of NGOs operating. They more operate within, say, Bangladesh, where the refugees are being put into refugee camps and trying to sort it there, because at the moment, due to the intense fighting, it's just not safe for NGOs to operate.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chris. And over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, so this week we've had a series of letterbomb attacks in the Netherlands. We've seen 2 IED detonations on the 12th of February. One was at a ABN AMRO bank in a sorting office in Amsterdam. And the second was at the Rika electronics firm in Kerkrade. There were no casualties in either of these incidents reported. And there was a third IED find of a parcel bomb in an unspecified location on the same day. Today, there's also been an initial report of a further IED parcel bomb detonation occurring at the headquarters of ING Group in Amsterdam. Police in the Netherlands have been investigating a series of letterbomb threats since January this year, all aimed at specific commercial or corporate organisations across the country. It is likely the perpetrator behind these recent attacks is also the same culprit behind these letterbomb threats.
And within the platform, you can actually, there is a section in which we can link different incidents together and their relationship. So you can actually start and see a kind of trend and pattern within these incidents. But what else have you noticed, Daniel?
So there's been unconfirmed reports that the letterbombs came with threats in this incident and obviously prior in January. And the perpetrator behind the attacks was demanding a ransom payment in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency in order to sort of prevent any further attacks on corporations or organizations. This looks like it's more criminally motivated than a terrorist threat to those organizations. It's likely as well this is a lone wolf attack. Having looked at the Netherlands for a few years, the tactics used here are very different to organised crime groups operating, say, for example, in Amsterdam or Rotterdam, where small businesses are generally targeted with grenades which are left outside entrances or detonated overnight, or shots fired at properties to intimidate local business owners in the early hours of the morning. This appears more sophisticated. It appears the perpetrator behind these attacks may have had some kind of IED manufacturing technical know-how or training. So it is likely that it's being conducted by a lone wolf. I suspect that commercial businesses, as a response to this, who've been threatened or who may be being perceived as being future targets due to being financial or commercial big names with a lot of money. They may be raising their own security posture as a response, and possibly making staff aware of an increased threat against their premises, or potentially their business travellers if the threat level escalates. Amsterdam police and the wider Dutch police community will obviously be endeavouring to try and arrest this individual, but at the moment the perpetrator still remains at large.
Thanks, Daniel. I think that very much wraps us up for this week. Please don't forget to like, share and comment on our video, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, team.
Sounds good.
Thank you.